So Ohio State's defense had a rough day against Oregon about 3 or 4 weeks ago, and Ryan Day decided to go into the defensive coaching staff meetings and just plop himself in there and say, let's fix this now. And since then, we've seen a better defense against Nebraska and against Penn State. Obviously, against Penn State, didn't give up a single offensive touchdown, just 2 field goals, plus a couple of goal line stands. We saw the same thing against Nebraska. Stefan, what do you think? Just like put yourself in the defensive staff room. What do you think Ryan Day's role was as an offensive head coach in helping Ohio State fix his defense over the last 2 games?
It seems like it was probably a situation where he was like, hey, if I was Oregon's offensive coordinator, this is exactly what I would have done, and here's how you can clean that up. Like, here's what would have made it. If I was an offensive play caller, here's what you could have done to make it tougher on me. That's kind of probably the best input, that he can offer from that perspective. But, one thing that's interesting is he used the term re-engineering this defense, but not in a way of, like, overhauling everything they did. And Jim Knowles even said that. He's like, it's not like we came out with a 3-man rush, out of nowhere. The defense itself still looks pretty similar. It just seems like they kind of simplified things a little bit. Like, hey, how about instead of worrying about, these big things, like, let's focus on these small things and what you can improve on that. And I think that's where Ryan Day kind of stepped in and was like, hey, let's do this. Like, let's not even think about these aspects of it. Let's just focus in on kind of fundamentals and the smaller things that I think has made this defense better. You look at the things they did with Davison, right? Like, he looked better against Penn State than he did the 2 weeks before. It was as simple as putting, mittens on him and being like, hey, don't hold, don't grab. Like, here's how you can learn this. So as much as you want to kind of look at it holistically and be like, Ryan Day stepped in and they completely overhauled this defense, this is not a 2001 situation. This is a situation where it seems like it was all a bit smaller, kind of not as bigger picture to clean up what they needed to clean up.
A lot of talk about just quickly being able to get lined up.
Yep.
I think Ryan Day and Jim Knowles both talked about that. Andrew, you're a fly on the wall in the defensive coaching staff meetings over the last 3 weeks. What do you think Day said? PG.
KISS. Keep it simple, stupid. I think that it's the pretty simple phrase, right? If you simplify things and you make things less complicated, you have 5-star defensive linemen and 4- and 5-star corners and elite secondary guys, and you should be able to win some of these matchups. So I think, yes, it comes down to simplification, but I also think it comes down to how can we just say, we have better players than most of the other teams that we are going to play. Let's go after them. Because I think since the Oregon game, we have seen a concerted effort to get after the quarterback. I think in Nebraska and Penn State, we saw it looked like blitzes. They were blitzing more. It looked like they were kind of doing different things in terms of how they were blitzing. They're sending guys are dropping back in coverage. Like they're doing a little bit to confuse opposing offenses. I think there was a question today asked by somebody who was basically saying, look, a Penn State offensive lineman said they threw different things at them and they weren't ready for it. And that was something that I think we really need to keep an eye on through the rest of the season. So, I think it was just kind of saying we don't need to be so complex. We can just pin our ears back and say we're going to go get whoever we're going to play. Now, I think you saw I guess maybe a midterm would be the best example for it. Ohio State probably got like a D or an F in that midterm against Oregon. Oregon moved the ball pretty effectively. I think you have made up for it with maybe some quizzes in these last couple of weeks. You have a final exam maybe coming down the line in the Oregon game. If you get there, Indiana's going to be a really good offense for you to face. So I think you've seen the benefit of it already. You have seen some of this start to work, and I think the more that this happens, the more that they get after the quarterback, the more that they are complex in their blitzes in terms of who they're sending. You don't have to be, overly crazy with it, but I do think they have simplified some things on the back end, and I think they just said, let's pin our ears back, let's go get after these guys.
Substitute teacher Andrew Gillis over here. I don't think it's that simple. Stupid. Simple for the defense, complex for the opponent. That's what Jim Knowles has always talked about. Yes, keep it simple for your team, but you want it to be complex for the opponent, which is why Penn State offensive linemen are saying that. It looks crazy to us, but these guys know exactly what they're doing. I think Ryan Day played a role in 2 different ways. For starters, we saw Jim Knowles get back to a little bit of what he was at Oklahoma State and what made Ryan Day go pay him $1.9 million to come here in the first place. It's not just simply, hey, defensive linemen, go win one-on-ones, because these defensive linemen have not proven the ability to do that and get home time and time again yet, at least not consistently. We've seen it in spurts, but not consistently. A moment that points out, obviously, is Jack Sawyer on Saturday, getting there, but getting home, but not finishing off the play with a sack. So we've seen more blitzes. We've seen Sonny Styles. We've seen Cody Simon. Caleb Downs, Lathan Ransom all getting sent on blitzes more. So just finding other ways to generate pressure without having to completely rely on a defensive front who has not shown you that they can consistently do it yet. So I think that's the schematic thing that we've seen. I think where Ryan Day has helped the most, I think you're right, it's the offensive perspective, but it's also I'm the head coach, and so this feeling of let's tweak some substitutions, let's tweak some rotations. Even if Jack and JT and Tyleek and Ty up front and Denzel and Davison Igbinosin in the back end are still playing a lot of the snaps, I think we've seen better substitution patterns over the last couple of weeks here. We've seen Jermaine Matthews get mixed in. We saw Caden McDonald get mixed in. And you also heard Jim Knowles and Ryan Day said he's got to play even more. You got to ratchet it up, right? You give him a little bit week 1, a little bit more week 2, and by the time you get to week 12, maybe he's playing 20, 25 snaps a game. He played 10 against Penn State, but some of them were pretty meaningful down the stretch there. I think that's where Ryan Day has helped the most. I was joking with some people before the press conference. I don't feel like when watching Ryan Day on the sideline against Penn State, there was a meaningful substitution made on the defensive line without Ryan Day at least being in the vicinity of Larry Johnson. That's what being a head coach is. And that's what you can do when you're not calling plays. And so you're not trying to figure out what your next set of play calls is going to be while the offense isn't on the field. Another benefit to Ryan Day not calling plays this year, so he can do stuff like that. We'll continue to have this conversation on Buckeye Talk, so go listen to that wherever you find podcasts. That's Andrew. That's Stefan. I'm Steven. Get the text 614-350-3315. 2-week free trial. 2 weeks. That's the Purdue game and the Northwestern game. Or as I told people in the pod, maybe you hold off and do it for the Indiana-Michigan game. That's, I think, when we will all do it. But listen, there's no bad week. There's only a reason why this is a good time to sign up. 614-350-3315. 2-week free trial, $3.99 after that. Stefan, Steven, Andrew. See you.